Trump amnesia is sweeping through Washington. Republicans who selectively ignored all kinds of transgressions by President Trump have suddenly regained their moral and ethical standards now that Democrats have taken control of the White House. And they're acting like the last 5 years never happened. The person most recently afflicted with Trump amnesia is Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn. Here he is slamming President-elect Biden's pick to head the Office of Management and Budget, Neera Tanden.
I think in light of her combative and insulting comments about many members of the Senate, mainly on our side of the aisle, that it creates certainly a problematic path. I've noted that she's apparently deleted a lot of her previous tweets in the last couple of weeks, which is seems pretty juvenile, and I mean, as if people won't have access to it.
Now, he is right that Neera Tanden is a mean tweeter. She has reportedly been deleting some of those tweets, notably about Republican senators whose votes she needs for confirmation. Just like everyone else, she should be held accountable for what she puts on social media. But perhaps Senator Cornyn is an imperfect messenger here, clutching his pearls in Donald Trump's oyster bar. In fact, let's roll his pearl clutching one more time.
I think in light of her combative and insulting comments about many members of the Senate, mainly on our side of the aisle, that it creates certainly a problematic path.
Combative and insulting comments about senators.
I call him Lying Ted Cruz. He's lying Ted Cruz.
We're not going to destroy the American dream for stupid people like Cory Booker.
Crying Chuck Schumer, I used to be a big contributor to. He used to kiss my ass, Chuck Schumer.
Blumenthal, who was a fraudster when it came to Vietnam.
That stiff Mitt Romney, a total stiff running, who, by the way, he's a dope.
This monster that was on stage with Mike Pence, who destroyed her last night, by the way, but this monster.
Rand Paul shouldn't even be on this stage. She's
Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren. She's a total failure.
Crazy Bernie. He is so crazy.
Don't fall asleep as we talk about Sleeping Bob.
I think Lindsey Graham is a disgrace. The guy is a nut job. I mean, what the... And honestly, I don't want his endorsement. I don't want anything to do with him.
He's not a war hero. He's a war hero because he was captured.
Little Marco, they hate him in Florida.
Now, the other ironic part of Cornyn's Trump amnesia is his sudden attention to Twitter, because this comes on the heels of his pretty noteworthy ignorance of what's said on the platform. Like many Republicans, he often dodges questions about President Trump's tweets by pretending he hasn't seen them or dismissing them with ambivalence, sometimes not so subtly.
Senator Cornyn, can you stop at the mics for a second? What do you make of the president's tweet this morning? And does the president need to be more cautious about what he tweets?
But now a sudden intense interest in the Twitter sphere. Tweets from the president. Cornyn doesn't want to talk about them, doesn't want to know about them, he told one reporter. He said, quote, "It's not his job to provide running commentary on the president's behavior, but tweets from a prospective budget director, he would like to provide running commentary on her behavior." And wait, there's more Trump amnesia. Cornyn suddenly very concerned about the business dealings of Biden's nominees.
The truth of the matter is we have simply no idea what kind of business or financial relationships these individuals have with foreign powers that could influence their actions as high-ranking government officials. This goes way beyond compliance with the Foreign Agents Registration Act. This is an ethical issue. It's a conflict of interest issue. When it comes to the business dealings of those who could serve in high-ranking government positions, full transparency is the only option. In fact, I will make a pledge here today. I will not support any nominee who doesn't provide full transparency into their work on behalf of a foreign government.
Cornyn's pledge wasn't one that he was interested in taking when he voted for President Trump twice. Cornyn details reasonable concerns, but he forgot to ask those same questions of the once most powerful man in America, a president who delivers taxpayer dollars to his own businesses, domestic and foreign, by almost exclusively staying at Trump properties during his travels as president, who hosted foreign dignitaries at his properties, who has continued business dealings in foreign countries while in the White House, who hid his phone calls with foreign leaders, and on and on. I mean, I only have several minutes here. But Trump also refused to release his tax returns. That was a big one, of course. He never, to this day, revealed what foreign entanglements he had. The New York Times got the closest. They reported that Trump still gets tens of millions in revenue and income from overseas, whether through properties or licensing deals. But concerns over that kind of thing just slipped Cornyn's mind until about a month before Election Day, as his re-election bid was shaping up to be uncomfortably competitive. He suddenly caught the courage to call the president out just a little, saying that he should have released his taxes. But last year, Cornyn didn't seem to think it was an issue for Congress.
This is not about trying to look at the president's tax returns. That's really not a legitimate scope of oversight. This is all for show.
Trump amnesia may strike the Senate, but tape doesn't forget.